So we have the XCarve 2017 version, the largest one they make. And then we have the Shapeoko 3 XXL, again the largest one they make, 2017 version. We have them side by side and we're going to run a comparison of both of them. I have two laptops hooked up to them in front of it just to show you guys. I have kind of an Asus gaming laptop and the Surface 4 Pro M3 version. That's weaker, much weaker than the Asus over here. It's just the two I have, and I generally run the Surface for both of them, and it works just fine. But we'll take a look and see how they compare. So getting zoomed in on them, you can see the Shapeoko takes up a little bit more room than the XCarve. When I was lifting both of these off their bases to put them on the floor, I could move the XCarve by myself. It was a little bit of a struggle, but not too bad. The Shapeoko is just way too heavy. There's no way you're moving it by yourself. If you are, it's going to fall on you or you're going to drop it. It took two people to move it. Let's start over here on the XCarve. Here is the main board. The power supply is all in the X controller. And that is coming off through the wires back here, plugging in to the back of it. It does have a fan and an on and off switch on the very back. And when I turn it on, you can hear the fan going. One negative about this XCarve is it does have a fan, and all the wires are pretty short, so it needs to be right next to your XCarve. This fan sucks dust into the machine if you don't have any dust collection like I didn't have. So it does get dusty. You're going to have to open it up and clean it out, and I'm not too sure about the fire hazardness because of all the electronics inside and the power. So that's one thing to keep in mind with the XCarve and the X controller. And here we are moved over to Shapeoko. You can see the main board is housed inside this metal. It's got two screws to take this off. All the wires are coming down and inside, and it doesn't move. It's actually attached to the metal rail, which is really nice. It gets it up and out of the way, and it doesn't require a board or some sort of mounting on the side. That's definitely a plus for the Shapeoko. Now, because it does not house the power brick inside, you do have a power brick, which I have right here. So it's two separate pieces. The benefit of this is you can move this up and out of the way anywhere. The negative is that you have to account for one piece and the other piece. So it does have an inline on and off switch. This is kind of awkward to place sometimes because of where you place the power brick. But if it's one of those moments where, oh man, I did it wrong and I need to physically turn it off real quick, you gotta grab this piece and turn it off and on. That's one benefit the XCarve has over the Shapeoko. It's got a giant red oh crap button. Slam it down, it turns the machine off, and everything is stopped. You're gonna use it at one point, especially when you're starting out. You're gonna set some sort of setting and it's gonna start carving wrong or too deep or something. As you can see, I carved too deep right here in the XCarve, and definitely use this button. You have to physically pull it up to turn the machine back on. One other benefit of the XCarve, it has the pause, play, and stop button. So you could pause it mid-cut and adjust some sort of setting and hit play and not ruin your whole carving. The Shapeoko does not have physical buttons for this, but both do have that play, pause, and start in their settings menu on the computer when you're running it. So there is that option there. I do like how the XCarve has the physical buttons, so you can just hit it if you're standing by. So let's compare limit switches. These are an add-on item for XCarve. They don't come standard. I did buy them. It's got a teeny little piece that comes up and clips. You have to attach these two clips here, and it will limit the movement when it detects it stops. These are super breakable. I have bent this top one because I just couldn't figure it out for the longest time how to get that wired. I eventually figured it out, but I had already bent it pretty good. So here's a limit switch for the Shapeoko. You can see right here. It is much sturdier. It's got a plastic that pushes in, and it's a lot nicer and more secure than the XCarve. It's just got a plastic piece that pushes in. when it touches the metal over here. These are in 3 different spots, and they come standard with the extra large and large package. It's not an extra priced add-on. It's already installed standard. Here's the Shapeoko plate that mounts the router to it. You can see that it is driven by a belt and some springs, which works completely fine. You can see there's a benefit. You have a gap between the router and the plate, so you can spin this either side. You have a lot more free movement. It does attach right at the highest point, so you push that down until it stops. This is extremely secure and tightens with 2 screws coming through here. And here's the XCarve version. It goes up and down with a screw, so it seems like it'd be more secure than belt driven. There is very little space to almost none between the router and the physical plate, so you're very limited on how this is turned. You can have it one way or the other, and that's it. It is secured by a full piece of metal and 3 screws. It does secure a little bit stronger, at least holding the router in. The plate that is attached to the router moving up down is much smaller and not quite as accurate as the Shapeoko. So the Shapeoko and the XCarve are belt driven. So here is the size of the belts for the XCarve. They are pretty thin, and they use the same size belts on all of their machines, no matter what size you get. And on the Shapeoko, it is much thicker. They use a thicker belt on the extra large and the large. I believe that's a 9mm, and I think this is a 6. But look it up and correct me if I'm wrong. This is top of my head. But it is thinner. I have had one break on the XCarve. I've had nothing break on the Shapeoko, and I think it's to do with the thicker belts. Alright, the way the Shapeoko attaches the belt is you feed it through this metal, feed it through, down, and back, and the 2 grooves go into each other, and you tighten it to the side with this bolt. And you have to, this is kind of like a measure and pull, and if it's not tight enough, you give a little bit or take a little bit away. It takes a little bit of time. And let's check out the XCarves. So here's the XCarves. Again, it's a smaller belt than the Shapeoko. It's fed through the same kind of L bracket, but they give you these plastic pieces here to squeeze them together. They also use this bolt in the front. You can make it loose or tighter, and it'll give you an adjustment. That is something the Shapeoko doesn't do. However, one thing is, if this is the front of the table, I've gotten jabbed by this bolt many times and has put some rips in my pants and shirt. So keep an eye out for that. So during assembly for the XCarve, you have to put all of the wires through the chains on your own. They don't come pre-wired. That's one thing the Shapeoko has over the XCarve, is that their chains come fully wired through. You don't have to open them up. Although the Shapeoko chain is not as smooth and much thinner than the XCarve, like I covered in the first video. One downside about running the router's power cord through the chain is that you're left with a really short stub to plug into the wall. I have to use an extension cord when it's normally plugged in to reach. That's no different than the Shapeoko. If you're running it through the way they said, actually I ran it through on the side, you can see that they have you run it on the side with a zip tie. You're left with a short stub, and I run it to an extension cord as well. So here is me pushing my body weight down, show you the flex. So here I am pushing it down, letting it go. Get closer and push down, let go. So that's the flex of the XCarve. So I'm going to do this the same way I did as the XCarve. I'm going to grab here, push down with my body weight, and show you the flex. And I don't think I moved it. And here's the XCarve side rail. I'm going to do the flex test over here. Again, my body weight pushing down. And there is a whole lot of flex on the side rails. These are thinner than the actual main rail going across holding the router. So there's more flex on this side. Here we are at the Shapeoko side rail. I'm going to push it. Now these rails are the exact same, all three. So here's my body weight. Not moving on that. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the XCarve actually moving and using it. And I want to show you a little bit about their software. So we're going to go into Easel, which is their software. And when you click it, oh, there is no internet connection. Guess what? You can't use the XCarve without the internet, which is the single greatest downfall of the XCarve versus the Shapeoko. It is the dumbest thing ever. If you have no internet, you cannot use Easel. That is the biggest difference between the Shapeoko and the XCarve. You can use the universal G-code sender or something like that, but if you just want to use the free software that came with it, Easel, you have to be connected to the internet. Thankfully, I have internet in my shop, so I am able to use Easel. So we're going to click on Sign In through Inventables. It's loading their software. And here are all the things I've created in the past. They're called projects. So we're going to start something new. I'm going to click on, well, right now I have a hand. Okay. It's slow. This is all dependent on their software. I have a 100 megabyte internet service to my house, so it is more than capable to run this fast, but it also relies on their server. So it is slow. So it is very similar to the Carbide software, where you're gonna see and use the left side to create your project, and on the right side you're gonna be able to zoom in and actually physically see what is coming out. So we're able to select different, it is also touch worthy. We can select what kind of things we're cutting. We're going to cut birch plywood today. And that gives you the auto feeds and speeds. You also click on the bit. This is much more visual than the Carbide Create. So it is aimed at the extremely newcomer to CNC. So it gives you an option for end mills down to a 32nd up to an 1/8. You can also put in other and choose your own end mill. And then on the bottom you can see it says Pro. So Easel has changed their service to where there is a free version and a paid version. Now you have to pay to use certain features of it. And one of the pay features is using V-bits. V-bits will help you carve signs and things. It's a really useful tool. Carbide Create does not charge for this. Easel does. So also keep that in mind. I think it's a huge downfall, and this should be included in the free service. It's a simple task, and there's nothing pro about it. Every other software out there does it. You can find free software that will also do this outside of Carbide Create or Easel. I believe F-Engrave is another one of them. Anyways, you would select, the end mill you're using, and then over here we're going to go ahead and create what we want to cut. Now they offer shapes. We just touch a square and we can just drag it however we want to cut it. You can see over here it's showing us a detailed preview. This will set the depth of how deep you want to cut. I'm going to use the mouse because it's a little easier. So you can see over on the side it's getting shallower. We could fill in the center. We could just cut the outline. I'm going to zoom in so you can see. So just cut a square outline. You can choose on path, outside, inside, anything like that. And we can go into edit and delete that if we want. Nope. I lie. We'll click on that and just push the delete button on the keyboard and it's gone. They have the circle, the triangle, the star, a pen version. I don't know what the pen does actually. You have the text button with a bunch of fonts. These are all Google fonts, and you can see that most of them say Pro. I have a few that don't. Those are the free ones. All of the Pro versions are ones you have to pay for, which is ridiculous considering these are all free Google fonts. So there's nothing pro about it. I disagree with their wanting to make money off of that feature, but that's where they chose to go. So we'll go ahead and choose a text. We are going to go, oops. We're going to type in Myers Wood Shop. And you can see over on the side, it's a really detailed view of what it would look like carving. So we can outline if we chose instead where you looks like it carved it out. They also have some icons where we click on that, and these are pre-made icons. Let's try a mustache. So we get a mustache down on the bottom. We'll make it bigger. So you can see over here, the mustache is now there. You also have some apps. These are some apps that they make. We have a box maker that will cut out simple shapes to make a box. You can make a maze, some inlay generators, fidget spinners. These are kind of crafty kind of things. Gear generator is pretty interesting. You can add teeth and so forth. But again, this is all run within a browser, so it's kind of slow no matter what you do. We also have the import button. You can import an SVG, G-code made from a different software, an image trace, which I use a lot. You find some images you like, it'll trace the image and put it into your machine. Once we're done with that, we're going to click Carve. Once you click on Carve, now you're into where you can move the machine. You can click Unlock without homing or home the machine. If you didn't buy limit switches, you're not going to be able to home the machine by one button. I think it's worth the investment, personally. But let's click Home the Machine. You've just clicked Home the Machine, and now the XCarve is moving to its home. Again, this is different than the Shapeoko, which homes to the back right. The XCarve homes to the front left. So it is just now homed to the back. Now I want you to measure the material. A digital caliper is really important for CNC machining. It will give you the best result overall, and I believe it's a must-have tool for this. Once we confirm what material thickness is, you hit the button. It will remind you to clamp down the material. Now I'm simulating this right now, so I don't have any material out there. We'll say the material is secure. You're going to confirm the bit you want to use. We're going to say a 32nd. Let's say a 1/8. Confirm the size. And here is where you have the option to probe the material or manually move it to where your material's bottom left corner is. We'll manually move it. And over here on the side, this is where you can move manually. And this is the only time you can do it when you go into Carve. There's no other option. You have to click Carve and go through this step to be able to move it. So we're going to move it a little bit. There are intervals, again, just like Carbide Create. You have 0.001, 0.01, 0.1, and 1. So I moved it 1. You can see it moving. And I'm just moving it around. This is the step where we were clearing all offsets and setting 0 in Carbide Create. This does it more visually in Inventable's Easel. And as well, we can move it up and down. and I'm going to set the steps smaller. You can also use the keyboard, the arrows up and down to move it around like that. Let's say this is confirming home position. Now we're almost ready to cut. It'll first say slightly raise the bit. Raise it a little bit above where you're at. You have to confirm that your spindle is on, which is actually the DeWalt router. Manually turning that on, because again, both machines cannot control the DeWalt router. You have to manually choose that. And then we're going to click confirm the spindle is on, and then we would click carve. I'm going to hit X and get out of that because we're not actually doing anything. We have no material. But that gives you a quick overview of Easel. Again, downfalls, you have to be connected to the internet. If your internet is fast and their servers are slow, Easel will still run poorly. Sometimes a detailed preview, it takes a long time to load, especially of a really detailed cutting. And you are limited in what you can do unless you pay for their subscription service. One pro is that it takes almost zero ability to learn this program. A lot of times I come back to this just because it is simpler. You can still use this program to work on the Shapeoko. You can also use Carbod Create to work on Inventable's X-Carve. So they are interchangeable. Finally, they do give you a simulation down here on the bottom. You click that and it will show you just how long it will take to cut this out with all the settings you chose. This simple little program shows about 18 minutes. They did add this feature to where you can push play and see where the cutter will actually move when it's cutting. It's a really nice feature, and it shows you if you've done something wrong. So that's it for Easel's and Inventable's Carbide Create. So here we are about to probe our workpiece. It's hard to show you at the same time, but I wanted to show you what it was. So here is what the probe looks like for the X-Carve. So you have the power on one end that will plug in up here. This is the actual probe. It can unplug into this metal. It's a heavy metal piece. Then the other end is a clip. So you can see over on the left side it says, do you want to work 0, probe, or manual? Earlier I showed you the manual. And we're actually going to click probe because we have the probe. So the first thing we do is use these things over here to jog our machine into position. I just put a piece of wood down. It's not clamped or anything. This is just for showing you guys what's up. So we're going to pretend like this is what we're going to do. So the machine is over our material. We're going to confirm the position. Plug the lead into the carriage. So there is a hole back here where you plug the power into. And once it's plugged in, it automatically gives a green check mark. Now, attach the clip to the cullet. So we're going to take this clip and attach it to the nut, the cullet on the machine. I'm going to try to move that out of the way so you can see the bit below. So we're going to click, clip is attached, and we're going to touch the plate to the bit to check to connectivity. So you're just going to take the plate and lightly touch it. And when it touches, it becomes green and it moves to the next step. Place the touch plate on the material underneath the bit. So we're going to move this little plate underneath the bit because this machine is going to go down and the bit will touch it. And it will sense how far it is with electronic contact. So the plate is in place. And then what we have left is start probing. So we'll go ahead and touch it. And you can see the machine is moving down. It touched the piece and it moved back up, and now the machine and the program know exactly where the top of your material will start. It tells you to disconnect the probe because you're finished with that, so I unplug it. I take the clip off and I just slide the probe away. Click the green Z probe is put away. And here we are, it's time to set 0, so here's where you would move it forward. Because remember, they use the front. Oop. I crushed my wire a little bit. Let me move that out of the way. They use the bottom left corner as the front, so we would just move it as close as we can, move it over, and we'd be pretty set starting right there. We would set that as our X and Y 0, so the machine will always go back to here to start. And now it's ready to cut. We don't move it up and down because it's programmed or no because of the probe. If I can give you one tip, it's absolutely spend the, well, XCarve's version is $29 on the probe. It saves you so much time and gives you a much better cut because it is the exact distance better than your eye can do. Absolutely worth it and worth every penny. The Shapeoko version has been out of stock. I don't have my hands on it right now. It is about $120, I think. It does a little bit more. It definitely looks like it's better built. And if I do get one, I'll shoot some video on that probe as well. You can still find it online if you did some searches for the Shapeoko probe, and some other guys have already done some video on it. So that's it for the XCarve's probe. Alright, so I'm going to get into cutting with this. I have some cut off scrap pieces of 3/4 birch plywood. I'm going to use one on each and cut them at the same time. I'm going to try to use the same file with the same size bit and show you guys what's going on with them. And just give you a simple, this one's cutting, this one's cutting. You can watch as they cut together so you can compare them. Okay, so that is both of them cutting. You could watch them both side by side. Now that video is a little deceiving. I say a little. There are two factors. One, Shapeoko cut a smaller square. The XCarve cut a bigger square. And two, the Shapeoko has double the size bit in it because I don't have the same matching bits, unfortunately. So don't take this as an absolute technical test. Again, this is for beginners. You got to see both of them work side by side and see how they perform. They pretty much work the same cutting overall. However, I found that on most things I've done, Shapeoko cuts about twice as fast. The rigidity of the machine and the bigger metal rails help it to be able to move faster and cut faster. The speeds initially are set up in Carbide Create. I think speed rate and feed rate are higher than Easel. They set it a little lower because it's more aimed for somebody who's a beginner. Speeds and feeds are a really big deal in the world of CNC. something beyond my head at this point since I'm a beginner, probably just like you if you're watching this video. Carbide Create speeds and feeds are a little bit faster than Easel's. I think Easel's plays it safe and Carbide Create likes to push it as fast as it can go. And it shows, it cuts the same quality, but it definitely cuts faster over here. So we come to the end of the series. I hope that this helps you decide between the XCarve and the Shapeoko. Both of them are extremely capable and would work really good in your shop. For me personally, the XCarve is going to go to a new home. The Shapeoko is going to stay here and I'm going to grow and learn with it. The great thing is that you can download and try both of their softwares for free, even without a machine. Go ahead and go to their respective websites and download the programs. You can start learning how to program these before you even own one of these machines. That way when you get it in the shop, you can jump right in and start cutting and make that money back that you spent on the machine. If you guys like this video, make sure to hit the subscribe and give me a thumbs up. It really helps me out. If you have any questions about either of these machines that I didn't cover in this video, make sure to leave a comment down below. I'll try to answer them the best I can, and hopefully it helps you choose which machine is right for you. And blah blah blah. I don't know what else I'm going to say.